Doesn't really matter.
Okay, let's do this. Hey, everyone. Thanks so much for coming out tonight.
Hello.
So pleased to be here with this gentleman who's simply the best of the best. Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean,
Thank you very
honestly,
much.
if you had stopped at Let the Right One In, that would have put you in the pantheon of greats. But then you continue on with Dunkirk and Tenet and Her. So again, congratulations on keeping the streak alive.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Whenever I have someone as accomplished as you, I actually love to go back to the beginning and ask, where did it all start? Was there a moment you sort of knew you wanted to be a director of photography?
No, not well. Yes, maybe. Start. I realized that I wanted to become a director of photography when I was maybe 12, 13 maybe. I think it was I was mostly inspired by a retrospect. My parents let us sneak downstairs sometimes, or we would sneak downstairs and catch Wednesday evening television, and they were doing a retrospect on Nicholas Roeg.
Oh, wow.
And I saw 3 Nicholas Roeg movies in a row, not really understanding them.
Sure.
Um,
Look, I'm in my 30s and I don't understand some of them. So
we were 13. There was a lot of naked in there.
Yeah,
That was,
yeah.
of course, very interesting for us as well. But they were very specific. They were very visual films. And I just remember realizing at some point somehow that, you know, doing things with images and light and cameras was actually a thing. It's actually a thing you could be good at, or you could actually do things with it, or kind of tell stories with it. And I think I always feel that these Nicholas Roeg movies, that was kind of for me the realization that, you know, maybe that was something that I could be interested in.
Was one of them Don't Look Now?
It was Don't Look Now, Eureka, Insignificance, Bad Timing. Uh, uh, I, uh, I I think one of these, yeah, one, 3 of these 4 at least. I saw all of them. Eureka, I remember very well.
Oh yeah, that one will stick
Yeah,
in your memory.
yeah,
Well, I know Oppenheimer is, I believe, your 4th collaboration with Christopher Nolan.
correct.
And it seems impossible, but you keep raising the bar every time. What was sort of your initial discussions when he brought you on the project? Like, does he tell you I'm working on this idea, or do you just see a full script?
No, he never reveals what he's working on. You know, he's coming to us when he's really finished and ready to go. You know, and the moment that he tells you, oh, you know, would you like to read a script? You kind of know that you're maybe the week after or 2 weeks after you're on a plane and you're scouting. You know, it's so and also you go into the script kind of. Fresh and new. You don't know anything about it, you know. So the first thing you read is the title, and then you sit in a room
Yeah.
somewhere, or at his house, in a special room, and you just from scratch you start reading it, and for the first time, and it's usually a very dense read. You know,
Yeah,
his
yeah.
scripts are, you know, as his films, they're, you know, challenging, and just on paper without the visuals, they, you know, they always take me a lot of time to get through. But you know, and then afterwards he asks, "So, what do you think?" And usually I have not so much to say after that. I'm
Yeah.
kind of floating on my way home, and yeah, then you kind of straight away start.
I mean, so you don't have to start having discussions right there in the room about the look or anything. You need to
Yeah, I
absorb.
mean, you do, or
Hmm.
from that moment we keep talking about it, but I always feel that when we start a film, we never start talking about looks, or you know, all the technical difficulties that we want to overcome. We kind of start very relaxed, and yeah, with very little stress somehow, you know. He you know, and that's also something, if you have worked on you know, on several films together, you kind of, your prep I always like to say it's like your prep is kind of the films you did prior to it. And, we have never sort of changed course or looks very radical after each film. I always have the feeling that all these films are a little bit of an evolution, and they kind of amount to, every film amounts towards the next one, and the next one is kind of a continuation. Not necessarily story wise, but definitely in our approach and the way we like to make films. So also a thing as look is in a way very weird understanding, because it kind of implies that we sit in a room and we come up with a way that this film has to look, and that we in a room sort of decide that everything has to be blue or brown or green. But it's not really about that for us. It's much more about how we start approaching the story and how free we want to be. And at some point we start talking about lenses a lot, and then when we talk about lenses, it has a lot to do with how visceral we want things to be, how close do we want to feel to the characters, how do we want to immerse ourselves into the story, etc. So it's much more discussions about that. We kind of very seldom use the word look. It's somehow a look always feels superficial to me.
Right.
Somehow it's like something decorative or it's something, and we try not to think about our films like that. Yeah.
Going back to the beginning, because I think your first film together was Interstellar.
Correct.
Was that like, I know that like actors have to audition for roles. As a DP, is it a similar process, or is it just you take a meeting?
I definitely felt as if I needed to audition for it. I was on another film with actually Thomas, the director I did Let the Right One In with, and we were preparing a kind of a dream project of ours, and that film fell apart, and I knew that Chris was. He was preparing something. He was interviewing DPs, and I asked Pete, my agent, who's here as well tonight. I asked him, "Are they still meeting people?" Because they had asked earlier for me, and Pete said, "I'll give him a call." And turned out they were interested in meeting me, so I got on a plane and
Wow.
flew all the way to LA and met them in Chris and Emma in their office. Spent 50 minutes in a room. We talked about a lot of things, but not about films or about that particular film. And then in the evening, they asked if I would come in and read the script, and which I did the next day. And I was reading that 158-page script as my plane was kind of on the runway already, warming up the
Wow.
motors. And so I tried to struggle through that script. And then after I finished that script, I maybe had I really had to go. But of course, Chris wanted to meet and talk. And I kind of said, I have a plane and I got to go. And I would love to talk more about it, but I can't. And he said, no, it's all good. And I got on the plane, and then when I landed, they decided that they wanted me to do the job.
Oh, fantastic.
But I also realized later that sort of the decision was already made a little bit before.
Oh, was it?
When we met, he's not somebody that frivolously
Yeah.
let somebody read the script. That is not
That,
just
yep, good point. Um, so when it came to Oppenheimer, I want to make sure I get this right because I was getting reversed. There's one timeline in color and one in black and white, and I understand that he had specific names for them. The color one was fission, and the black and white was fusion.
Fusion.
Was that something that, again, I don't know if he writes that into the script or it's a conversation that you have at the beginning.
I would love, I would love to take credit for it, but it was definitely something that he wrote already in the script. So the division between black and white and color, it was for Chris initially was a way to clarify the two different narratives, Strauss's narrative and Oppenheimer's narrative. And it was very nice to read it on the page,
Yeah.
but it was a big challenge to, actually get it done.
So something I just learned today, and you're probably all much smarter than me that when it comes to this stuff, but that black and white film did not exist for IMAX. You literally
Uh,
had to go to Kodak.
yeah, 65 millimeter film didn't exist, so we went to Kodak and asked if they could make it. They said, "We're not sure," but they at some point they actually said that they could, and that they were willing to try, and so they did it, and they sent us at some point. Big reels of film, handwritten, what was in it. So they made, put emulsion on a 65 millimeter black and white strip film, and we started testing it, and then we learned that it's not just about them being able to make the film, but we also found out that that film didn't really work in the cameras that we had available to us. So we had to re-engineer the cameras. We had to change the gates of the cameras and the pressure plates because we got like weird light artifacts, etc., etc. Then we had the lab. The lab had never done it, and they didn't have like a ready available pipeline for it. So they had to seriously rebuild their lab. They had to install like gigantic chemistry tanks in which they could, store chemicals that they would use for color in order to, make space for the black and white chemicals. And then for production that we were planning, they had to be able to change that. And we had to plan our production around that as well. So we had like sections and periods where we would just shoot black and white, and then the lab could, turn around to color again, and they could test it. So we needed to bake in several days for them to test, and then go back to color, and so it was all along the road from manufacturing to actually developing and printing. It was a whole Megillah. It was, and it involved just really a lot of people that helped us out.
I mean, so for this movie, you're literally creating new technologies, essentially, and new ways of doing things.
Yeah, I like the sound, the sound of it, but we kind of always do. We kind of,
Yeah.
It comes a little bit from that idea that every film deserves kind of its unique language and its unique approach, and you very often you can resort into sort of off-the-shelf solutions, like but you very quickly you run into your limitations. Like for instance, the IMAX camera, it's one of the most beautiful and biggest negatives in the world. There's so much depth to it, and it's so special. And from shooting other films, you think that being this close to a human face with a specific lens is very special and intimate and beautiful. And then you start thinking, but how would that be on an IMAX camera? That would be, but those lenses don't exist. So then you start asking, can you help us? Can you make us? Can you adapt lenses, or can you build them? And Panavision in this case, like Dan Sasaki, is one of those magic, artists / engineers that is always helping me out with these kind of problems. And he has the ability to actually build lenses and actually dream stuff like that up. And so we always end up building stuff to make things possible that we really want or that we really desire, and it comes very much from sometimes you just cannot pull it off a shelf, so you have to figure it out.
And I think most people know that Christopher likes to forego as much as he can CGI, and he likes to do things in camera. Can you talk about working with the visual effects team and how you collaborate on certain scenes? I mean, the obvious one that comes to mind is the Trinity test. Like pulling that off practically When you hear that, do you get excited or do you get exhausted, or both?
No, I usually get excited,
Yeah.
but it's also after fourth film with Chris, you kind of know that's the modus operandi is to try to get things in camera, and that's for a variety of reasons. The one of the reasons is that it's of course great for the crew, but also especially for actors to interact with things that are tactile and that are real, and also after a day's shoot you very clearly know what you will have. And since we always watch dailies and rushes, the next day, on a screen on film, you also you see the progress of your film at the spot, and you can act and react very much, every consecutive day. So it's very productive process for us to do it that way. And the other reason is that if you do things practical in camera, that means that you don't have to scan it. And if you shoot on a very big format and you scan film in order to do digital effects to it, that means just by doing that step, you lose a tremendous amount of quality. And if you work on a negative that can contain like 18K resolution per frame, theoretically, and you can scan, and you'll probably be working in 6K or something, if you're very lucky. So it's for us the best way to preserve as much as possible of the original quality that we commit to the film in the first place. But now back to your question. That of course has a lot of implications on the visual effects team and the special effects team, because instead of after film have meetings and sit in glass cubicle and decide how things are going to be done, they actually have to figure out
Yeah.
stuff on the set, and instead of building worlds digitally, they have to think what the camera sees, and they have to actually practically build things. And in a way, it requires kind of the same mind, but the only thing is that you use that mind at the same moment that everybody around on the set is using that mind, and also you see your result directly. And Andrew Jackson, our brilliant visual effects supervisor, he was 100% on board with this, and he was like, simultaneously when we were shooting scenes for the film, he was on the side with his own little team with a camera, shooting like science experiments, and shooting molten metal dropping on metal plates, and swinging ping pong balls on wires, etc., etc. And so when he did that, we could then see that result the next day again in dailies, and we could then react on it, and we could use it, and we could give our input. And he was like scraping together all visual effects elements. And then of course there's a lot of visual effects in this film, but they all sort of originated from the same space as where we were filming, and at the same moment.
I imagine there's also a lot of trial and error. Like you're probably figuring it out as you go. Like how long did it take to plan the Trinity test?
I mean, how long? You mean in days, hours, weeks?
Years?
No, but it's always a little bit with these big scenes. They feel so big on paper, and they are so big in your mind, and they're so big. Sort of, it's like every time you're in front of the Mount Everest, and you have no idea how you're going to do things, and you have just no idea, how much it involves and how much people, but the size of it is a little too abstract to comprehend. So the best method is just to sort of start, and that's kind of what we do. And we start very often with tests, we camera tests, and for me it has a lot to do with lights and brightness of lights and flashing and so on. And then you look at your own tests and you learn from that a little bit, and we start figuring things out. And usually, like I said before, and we kind of figure things out together, and get inspired from each other, and slowly, we come up with ways to kind of do it. And then there's the other element as well, is that Chris is a brilliant editor also in his mind, and so the sum of the scope and the size of it is not just us performing and making that one thing very big, but it's also the sum of all the little elements and the little pieces, and it really takes a brilliant director to on set, put those pieces already in his mind together, yeah.
I actually want to take a couple quick questions from the audience. If you have one, I believe we have ushers here who just raise your hand. Sure, we have one right there.
Hello, sir. Thank you for coming out tonight. And I just want to say this is my second time watching this film, and still I feel that the fact that I need to blank makes me feel like I'm missing out so much. That's why, that's how much I like the cinematography of this film. And
That's
my
nice
question,
stuff.
yeah, and my question is this: so, what is the scene that you have the most fun shooting? And I'm leaving the definition of fun completely up to you. Yeah, thank you.
The most fun.
Oof. Yeah, I have not answered that question for myself yet. So,
Is it fun even when it's hard? Are you have it?
yeah, but yeah, you have crappy days and you have good
Yeah.
days, and the magic very often for when you make a film is very often when you have the least faith and you feel kind of the shittiest. And you go home and you think, this was a horrible day, and you watch dailies the next day. Sometimes you discover magic things,
Yeah.
and they're sometimes very special. And then you have these days where you think, everything is just flowing and your rhythm is right, and you get everything you want, and you're sort of flying and floating through the day, and you go home and you think this was the best day ever, and you watch the dailies the next day and they're slightly disappointing, but I think the most fun is actually to for me it's very often like a jam session, like I wish I was a musician, but I just imagine how it is like when you're a musician, when you do something that is very simple, and you have maybe on set a director and an actor, and or an actor and an actress, and you're having a scene, and you're trying to work things out. You're trying to sort of work a little bit on the mise en scène, and things don't work out necessarily. But then at some point you just feel like something clicks, and you see a performance, and you have the camera on your shoulder on a tripod, and you look through the viewfinder, and you're witnessing something that you think is extremely special, and that happened to me more than once on this film, for instance. And it's very often very simple things, and I cannot put my finger on it, or I don't know exactly when that is, or what makes it, but sometimes you are granted the feeling that you are allowed to witness a tiny little bit of magic. Yeah.
Think we have time for one more?
Thank you so much for your time. You talked about technical challenges when it came to shooting black and white and color, but I want to know if there are any artistic challenges when you're shooting both color and black and white in the same production.
Ooh, artistic challenges.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to sort of, I mean, technical challenges for me are very often also very much related to artistic or creative challenges in that way. I mean, in our profession, in a way, the technology serves somehow a very abstract and creative purpose, right? It's like you use very complex technology, to communicate very basic human feelings. But related to the black and white and the color, you have to kind of think different about light and about darkness when you shoot black and white and you shoot color. I when I do black and white, I squint a lot more, because you kind of have to eliminate the whole idea of color and the whole idea of color contrasts. Effectively, when you shoot black and white, green becomes red and red becomes green. It's the same thing. The film sees it the same. So you start thinking in a much more sort of abstract, or it's much more like a charcoal drawing in a way. You kind of set up lightness and darkness, and that's kind of how you work. So in that way, you have to be a little bit more careful with black and white, but on the other hand, you also have to be a little less careful, if that makes sense. You have to sort of, work more sort of holistic, more with a rough brush, and at the same time, you can screw up much easier with black and white as well.
I mean, it's such a beautiful film, both for the eyes, but also the heart. It's just I love that you have brilliant sweeping landscapes, but also these close-ups of faces that are just equally beautiful. And I want to remind everyone, this movie is now out on Blu-ray and 4K DVD, so you can watch it again and again. But how great to see it again in a theater. Thank you so much for being here. Yes, and thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. It was very nice.